Okay, good morning everybody. We start a new book in the Torah, the fourth book. It's called Sefer BaMidbar. Literally that means the book of the desert, in the desert. The rabbinic name for that is called Sefer Pikudim, the book of numbers, because there's a lot of things that are counted. The first parsha begins with lots of counting all the tribes and things like that, counting the Levites. Today what I want to do, since there's no class next week, it's Erev Shavuos, and I can imagine there's going to be much less people ready to learn on Erev Shavuos. So the next class will be 2 weeks from now. So I want to give a bit of an overview over the entire book and what's one theme of this Sefer, and we'll give you some very practical ways of coming away with solid tools for us to appreciate what's going on over here. First thing we need to mention is that we've gone through the first 3 books of the Torah, and what Sefer Vayikra basically told us is what does it mean for the Jewish people to live like the Jewish people. And that was the whole idea of Kedoshim Tiyu, to be a holy people, to live beyond the letter of the law. The way the expectations of our behavior are different than other people. It is the most laudable attributes. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor like yourself. All these amazingly beautiful things that you can be a holy people. That is all what we call theory. The Mishkan was erected. We have a holy place now. We have all the instructions to be a holy people. Now the book of BaMidbar takes it down to, okay, now let's see what really happened. Let's see how human beings were given this book of instructions. They were given everything that they need to be the best people they could be. How well did they do? And what lessons can we learn from them? And so what I'm going to do first is going to look at 3 stories that are throughout this Sefer, and raise some questions, and then we'll give you some answers, and then we'll see. I'll come back to give you a better understanding, like what is the significance of BaMidbar. You're calling a whole key element of the Torah is dealing with in the desert. So what is the aspect of in the desert going to help us? And there's many commentaries on this, and I want to offer a new understanding of that. So we're going to start with source number 3, and that's going to be in Parshas Ba'alosecha. In Parshas Ba'alosecha, it says, "Vayishma Moshe sa'am boicha lemishpachosam ish lepesach olo." Moshe hears the people crying, each one weeping in their family groups, ish lepesach olo, each one at the entrance of his tent. And Hashem was very angry, and in Moshe's eyes it was very bad. What's the story over there? The story over there is the Jewish people were complaining about the manna that they were getting every day. And they were saying, we remember the good old days in Egypt, where we were by the flesh pots of Egypt, and there was onions and garlic and melons and things like that. And today we're getting just this regular, everyday, this mun, this food from heaven, same old mun, right? And they tired of it, and they were crying and about we don't like the diet that we have. So all right. So if you look at the text, you're all right. You give any person the same food every day, I guess you get tired of it. And they want a little variety in what they're eating. No. However, if you look in Rashi, who brings from the words of the rabbis, you see an interpretation that seems to be very, very far away from what we would think the reality was in this pasuk. So in the 4th source, Rashi says, "Bochela mishpachosam." So the wording of the text tips us off. People crying in their family groups. Why do you have to say crying in your family groups? Just say they were crying. Why does it have to say in their family groups? So he says, "V'rabosenu amru," and our rabbis tell us that there's much more than what appears to be. L'mishpachosav, regarding it's in their family groups. It means al iske mishpachos, regarding the families, which really means al arayos shenesru lahem, regarding the relations that were forbidden to them. In other words, before we got the Torah, we weren't told there were certain people we were not allowed to marry. You're not allowed to marry certain close relatives. Torah doesn't allow it. As we discussed why about 5 weeks ago, I believe. Did we talk about that? Yeah, why we can't have certain forbidden marriages, unless it was the other alternative class. But anyway, can't have it. Well, before Torah was given, there are people who were married to their close relatives. Now, they come back from the mountain, and God tells them the Torah and says, guess what? You people can't be married to these people. So what would have to be is people would have to divorce their wives and husbands. So what the rabbis are saying here is that you think it was an issue of complaining about the man, and the rabbis are saying, no, really, it was issues of morality that they were complaining about. That's what the rabbis say. So, okay, so you could say there is some textual support to what's going on, but the real question is, no one was talking about relatives. No one was talking about morality. So where do the rabbis come off to give such an interpretation that's so far removed from the text? Story number one. Story number two. The story of the spies. Next parsha, Parsha Shlach. It's like every parsha has a story. Parsha Shlach, we all know the story where the 12 spies were sent out to spy the land. And they came back, 10 of the 12 spies came back with a very, very troubling report. And they said, yes, it's a beautiful land. Yes, it's an amazing land. But no, we will not be able to conquer the land. And they were able to sway the Jewish people to that side. And the Jewish people believed the story, and they cried and cried. And we know that is the origins of Tisha B'Av. So if you'd say, what was the problem with the spies? You could say maybe they were afraid of the giants. They're afraid they get killed. You could see that being part of the text. They mentioned there were big giants and we were like grasshoppers in their eyes. But if you look in the Zohar, source number 5, when it says Kulam Anoshim, they're all men. So the Zohar says, that is, they were all tzaddikim and leaders of the Jewish people. However, they chose for themselves bad advice. Why did they choose this advice? They said, if the Jewish people enter the land of Israel, we will be removed from our leadership roles, and Moshe will appoint different leaders. In other words, they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. These people were the princes of each tribe. The 12 spies were the princes of each tribe. And they said, right now we're the princes of the tribe. As they say, for we only merited to be leaders in the desert. But when we go to Israel, we will not be the leaders anymore. And we don't want to lose our jobs. So therefore, we're going to give bad advice so that we will remain in the desert. That's what the Zohar says. Since they took this bad advice for themselves, they died, and all who accepted their words died as well. Now again, the Zohar goes to the depths of what the real reality is. And again, the question can be asked. If you look at the story, there's no indication that this was an issue of their prestigious positions were at risk. So where does the Zohar have the right to come up with such a biting analysis? Okay, and one more for good measure. We move on in the book of BaMidbar. Get the story of Korach. Korach, who comes to the people as a democratic, religious person, and he says to Moshe, Moshe, we all heard the Torah from Hashem. We all received the prophecy when he gave us the Torah at Sinai. Why are you and Aaron taking all the prestigious jobs? Why are you making the religion the exclusive domain of the priestly class? What about everybody else? We should all be able to be leaders. We should all be able to become close to Hashem. And Moshe, it says, no, that's what Hashem said. Hashem told me, I'm the leader, my brother's the leader. That's what he said. He says, no, we don't believe that. We think you're making it up, etc., etc. So to that, source number 6, in the first pasuk in Parshas Korach, it says, Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kohas ben Levi, v'Dosan v'Avrim ben Eliyav, v'Om ben Pelas ben Ruvain. Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Kohas ben Levi, he took, and also Dosan and Aviram, etc., etc. So Rashi there, again, bringing from the rabbis below, says v'Dosan v'Aviram. So Rashi asks, Uma ra'a Korach lachlok imosha. And what did Korach see to argue with Moshe? Why did he start up this fight with Moshe? So he says, Niskane al Nesiyaso Shalit Safan ben Uziel. He was jealous over the appointment of Elitzaphan ben Uziel to be the prince over the tribe of Levi, upon whom Korach was a person in that tribe. Shimino Moshe Nosel b'nei Kos al pi dibur. That Moshe appointed Elitzaphan, the son of Uziel, as Hashem instructed him to. And Korach had a whole calculation. He said, okay, I understand the tribe of Levi, there were 3 sons, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. And so Kahas was a very spiritual person. So I understand. So Moshe and Aaron should get, but according to the calculations of the birth lineage, Korach saw that he should be in line for an important job. And he didn't get it. And really, someone who was much younger than him got the job. So he was jealous that he didn't get the job, and because he was jealous he didn't get the job, he made this whole spiel to show that everybody could be a spiritual person. Again, the same question has to be asked. Where do you see in the text any suggestion that Korach had these very nefarious objectives and motivations, when in reality he was giving a very populist stance that everybody should have a chance to be close to Hashem? It sounds like a very religious issue. And the rabbi is saying, no, it's not a religious issue, it's an issue of jealousy. So, and throughout the Torah you will find midrashim like this, where the story looks one way, the midrash turns the whole thing on its head. And that's why, if you don't really learn the Torah with the commentaries and the midrashim, you really don't understand the Torah. So to understand this, we're going to explain it in 2 ways. It's really the same thing, but one is said in a Litvish way and one is said in a Hasidish way. So to give it to you full coverage on both ends. So one way we'll present it from Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky of blessed memory in his Sefer Iyunim Bamikra, where he gives us an idea. But then we will go to the Piasetzner Rebbe, who takes it much deeper into more of a psychological realm that'll be very interesting. So Rabbi Yaakov, deals with another story in the Torah. Now, I don't have this source down, I'll just say it to you. But he deals with another source in the Torah. The story with Lavan and Avraham. We know that Avraham left his birthplace to go to Israel, and then during the famine he went to Egypt, and then afterwards he left Egypt, came back to Israel. And Avraham was a very wealthy man. And Lot, his nephew, had been tagging along with him the entire trip. And because when you tag along with tzaddik, if a tzaddik does well, you do well as well. So Avraham and Lot both were very wealthy shepherds. The Torah tells us the story that there was so much wealth that the land for the sheep to graze was not enough. So there's all kinds of problems. The Avram shepherds are taking the sheep, Lot shepherds taking the sheep, and then Lot shepherds says there's no room, so they start going to private people's property, and the shepherds of Avram says, you can't do that, you're stealing. He says, what are you talking about? Avram one day is going to inherit the land, it's ours already. He said, it's a big argument. And Avram doesn't want there to be an argument, so he says to Lot, listen Lot, there shouldn't be an argument between us. Listen, you pick a spot of land you want, wherever you want to be, I'll go somewhere else. Shouldn't be any more fights. So what does he do? He decides to move east towards the Jordan River in the vicinity of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the Torah writes it's a very rich, lush pasture land. It's a fertile area. It's by a valley. So lots of grass and lots of good things over there. Okay. So when you look at the text, you say, okay, Lot wanted the most prestigious land in Israel for his sheep to graze at. Reasonable. You look Rashi over there, brings from the rabbis. I didn't bring it for you, I'm sorry. Brings a medrash and say that they learned this in a derogatory way to Lot, because really he went there because they were shitufei zima. They were extremely immoral people, and Lot wanted to hang around such a place. He wanted to be in such an environment. If a person has a choice, where do you want to, build a Jewish home? Do you want to build it in Muncie, or do you want to build it up in Las Vegas, on the Strip, right? Where would you like to raise your Jewish home? I'm not talking about going on a vacation. I'm saying this is going to be my permanent residency. All right, if a person decides he wants to live on the Strip of Las Vegas, it kind of tells us what kind of guy he is, right? It's not just business, right? There's all kinds of ways to make business, right? So again, the question is, what gave the right for the rabbis to assume the worst in such a person when you could assume better? So Rabbi Yaakov gives the following answer, and this really will answer all the questions. And Rabbi Yaakov says it in a very poetic way. He says, just like there is in the Torah a concept called pardes, which I'll explain, so too with people there's a concept called pardes. Pardes literally means an orchard, but it's an acronym. The letters Pei, Reish, Dalet, Samach. When you're learning Torah, there's different layers of the Torah. Just like an onion. You could look at an onion, you look at the outside of the onion, you got this brown, crusty part, right? You peel away the first, what do you call it? Peel? Whatever, the piece, right? And then you can peel another piece, and another piece, till you can come to the little core, that little onion, right? So the Torah is a pardes. Meaning to say, when you look at the text, it's what you look at the simple translation of the words. We call that with a pei, pshat. The simple interpretation. It says that, Lot went and moved to this part of the land. That's pshat. It's what your eyes see. It's the outer layer. It's the outer layer of reality. Then, there's the next layer called remez, with a resh. Remez means, there's a little hint in the text that shows you that, there's something a little odd over here. It's still, the outside layer looks pretty much the same, but there's something that doesn't fit in. Maybe there's a word that is misplaced, and that the translation just wouldn't be exact the way it is. So it kind of shows you there's something else there. We don't know. But it's hinting, right? That's remez. A remez is a hint. You look at it and say, something doesn't look exactly the way it appears. Which takes us down to the next level, which is the remez of drush. Drush, that's the midrash. And the drush says, this is what really happened. Although on the surface it looked this way, but you could see on the surface there's something already a little bit unusual. If you look a little bit deeper, you're going to see what really happened. Okay, and then, so now you've already unpeeled a few layers. Something looked this way, but then you peeled one layer. Yeah, but something a little bit odd with that. Let's pick another peel. Whoa, now we really see what's going on. But there's still one more layer. You gotta know why is what's really going on happening. And that's called sod. That's the secret. Meaning, what really is cooking inside the person. What really is going on over here. And that's the sort of way you learn. Now you're wondering, why was the Torah written that way? Why did God write the Torah? Why doesn't God write in the Chumash, start with the sod? Start with the sod. Just tell us what kind of game is going on over here? I look at the text, and it appears to be this way. If I look with a discerning eye, I'll notice there's something out of place. Then I go and open up a midrash, and the midrash says, no, it's exactly the opposite. And then I go open up a Zohar, mystical teachings that gives me the deepest secret, and they tell you the deepest understanding of why was going on. Why don't you just give it to us the way it is? And that's what Rabbi Yaakov is saying. He says, just like in Torah there's a pardes, just like in Torah there's layers, so it is with people. Every person is a pardes. You meet anybody, You look at the person, they do a certain behavior, there's a pshat to their behavior. They do a certain thing. But then if you look carefully at what they're doing, you notice there's something unusual how a normal person, let's say, going to the store wouldn't do it exactly this way. So there's a little remes, there's a little, not exactly, something's missing. And then when you peel off another layer, you find out a whole other reality to this person. The person's motivations were totally different to what the motivations were. And then you go deeper psychologically. You go to the sod, you go to the secret. And sometimes it's a secret the person himself doesn't even know. The person you're analyzing doesn't even realize why they're doing such behavior. Right? So, it shows up in so many ways. And this is a very critical thing, because in terms of interpersonal relationships, why people have so much trouble getting along is because people are, unfortunately, they only deal with other people at the pshat level, at the first surface, or maybe the second surface. But quite often they don't really know what's going on deeper, and more than that, they don't know what's motivating this deeper behavior. And that's why there's all kinds of trouble in relationships. Because we only deal with the surface, we don't go deeper. And what the Torah is teaching you, the Torah is the book of life. If you want to know how to live your life, the Torah says we're going to show you countless stories about life in all areas that you will encounter in your life. And you'll see that you can look at it on the superficial level, but no, by learning Torah, every time you learn Torah, you say, well, this is the way it looks. But now let me start looking for a hint. And then after the hint, I go deeper. I say, it's really not like that at all. And then I go and find the deeper reason for what's going on. If you're good at that in learning Torah, then hopefully you'll translate that in human relationships. And when you see people behaving in a certain way, you know you don't just take the pshat. You look for certain subtleties. And then you go deeper. So you could go to university and take many years of psychology and all these things, and they'll train you with certain understandings of that, and some of those ideas may even be very accurate and true. But if you want to be a true psychologist, you just need to learn Torah. You go to university, they give you case studies. What do you think the Torah is? The whole Torah we've been learning, and especially the book of BaMidbar, it's case studies in human psychology. It is the greatest psychology book because they tell you real people, real scenarios, dealing with trust in God, belief in Hashem, getting along with people, giving you the superficial story, then giving you hints that it's not really the way it is, and then you go deeper, and then you finally come to the root of what's going on with the people. And quite often, there is a certain type of bias or hidden agenda that exists. Now, if you really want to be successful in life, to know how to deal with other people in your life, you better start training yourself to don't believe anything you see. Or what's a better expression? You don't believe anything you hear and half of what you see. Half of what you see is maybe true, maybe half. The superficial, you're seeing something, but that's maybe half of the story. To never accept that what you're seeing is the whole story. Because human beings, remember, the Torah, there are 600,000 letters in the Torah, there's 600,000 Jews, root souls of Jews, mystically, right? And that's what the word Yisrael, Yud, Shin, Resh, Alf, Lam, it stands for the sentence, Yesh, Shishim, Ribi, Oises, LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters of the Torah. Every Jew is connected to a letter of the Torah. Meaning to say, when you're learning Torah, you're learning how a Jew works. You're learning how a human being works. That's what many times I've asked. I give a class, I ask 10, 15 questions, and then we unravel it layer after layer after layer, and somebody will come over to me and say, that was an amazing class, it all makes sense. Why didn't God write it straight up front this way? So this is the answer, is to train us how to look at life. If the Torah just puts it all out the way it is, but you go into the real world, you never see it that way. So that wouldn't be an accurate presentation of life. To understand, there's a lot of points over here. But one point is, why are the rabbis, giving their interpretations? It's not the shot why the rabbis giving their interpretations. God, when he wrote the Torah, wrote it like an onion. He wrote it specifically this way. to make it hard to understand what the pasuk means. You learn the Torah just by reading the Bible text without the implicit commentary that's there. It's as foolish as dealing with people by just looking at the superficial actions that they do, and you know you'll be a failure in relationships that way. So God intentionally wrote it that way, intentionally to make us go through the rigors of deeper analysis, so that we should translate that deeper analysis from the text and put it into real life, and then you'll have a successful way of understanding life. So that's what Rabbi Yaakov says. I mean, I'm expanding on his words, but that's what he is really saying. And therefore, if we look at the story of Lot, and we'll start from Lot, and now we'll peel it across all the way. Look at the story of Lot. So it looks like, if you ask Lot, you say, Lot, why are you going to this area, to the east bank, the west bank of Israel? He says, what are you talking about? It's luscious grass. It's unbelievable stuff. I have no problem feeding my animals. I'm very concerned about parnasa. I'm very concerned about making a living. Right? So, and of course, there's not enough land between me and Avram. He even said that. But the rabbis understood that that is the most absurd thing that he could have ever said. Why? Because number one, do you realize who you are walking away from? He was tagging along with Avram Avinu. Okay, Avram Avinu was the greatest human being on the planet. Okay, it's not just any old person. He's the greatest human being on the planet. He represents the most spiritual force in the world. And Lot himself was eminently aware of that. Because when Avram was told to leave, Lot tagged along with him. And more than that, how did Lot become wealthy? Only because he tagged along with Avram. Because he was with Avram, and he saw firsthand how God miraculously saves Avram, how God miraculously makes him rich, and how Lot, by being connected to this tzaddik, is becoming rich because of that. So how can you say that you're going there for parnasa reasons? In other words, you're saying one thing, but you're lying. So therefore, there has to be a hidden agenda. There has to be a hidden agenda. And then, by looking at the text, and the next verse of the Torah says that, Sodom was a very terrible place, very sinful place, and things like that. Says, why is a guy like that going to such a place? So let's go. Let's have someone who is raised in Muncie, okay? Raised in Sefer, all right? I'm talking about the most religious part of North America, right? And does well. There's a homegrown business, and kind of horror, he's able to support his family, and everything's fine. Maybe it's a little crowded in Sefer. People don't have the largest homes in Sefer, but everyone's needs are provided for. One day he says, I decide I'm moving to Las Vegas. He says, what are you moving to Las Vegas for? I have to make more parnasa. So who are you fooling? What are you talking about? Now, if the guy was mamish poor and his children were hungry and starving, okay, never, he has to go to Las Vegas. But when you tell me you're moving there for parnasa, the parnasa is better. You're in such a wonderful spiritual place. Your needs are taken care of. So there's a hidden agenda over here, and that hidden agenda is one that you're not addressing. And this is where the rabbis get this idea that they're totally correct in their analysis of this situation. So this is point number one. Now, before we come back to these three stories of the Torah, which will have the same thing, I now want to move on to the Piasetzner Rebbe, who now takes this to a much deeper level. And this is like an amazing piece. It's an amazing piece. We're on the second side now. It's from his work called Sav V'Zerus. Sav V'Zerus was a work of the Rebbe where the Rebbe took down, it was like his diary. But when he would write a diary, you figure, what does a tzaddik write in a diary? He mentions this good thing that everybody should have their own diary. He says, everybody should write their own diary. He says, by the time we become spiritually mature, is the time where we almost leave this world. He says, by the time we finally get over our hang-ups and finally become a person who's productive and you're over all your problems, you're an older person. And by then, when you're ready really to do what you're meant to on this planet, you start to deteriorate and you fade away. So what a waste. It took me so long to say, now you gave me the first 70 years. Now I know what it means to be a mensch. Now Hashem, give me another 70 years. No, then you go right down. So he says, one of the things you should do is you should write a diary. You should write a diary of your personal experience of the spiritual ups and downs of your life. What lessons you learned of spiritual growth. And certainly, what do we have to write it for? Don't we have tzaddikim in the past? But we don't have people who've been living in the 21st century. Chofetz Chaim didn't live in the 21st century. And the challenges of the 21st century are unique. Internet, things like that. Advertising. It's not the same issues they had 150 years ago in Poland. So a person has to describe, what were the challenges I had in spirituality? What strategies did I use? What things if I was younger, would I now be doing it this way? He says you should leave this kind of a diary for your children, so that when your children are young and grandchildren are young, they could get the sage advice, so they don't have to make the same mistakes you made, and therefore your life really continues with that. It's an amazing concept. So that's what this book was. The Tzav Zerus was his own personal essays of feelings that in his life he felt about spiritual growth. And again, he didn't go to any university, but when you showed this, when somebody took this essay to a psychologist, and they told that this guy wrote this 100 years ago, psychologist, it blew his mind. He says, wow, how did these rabbis know this stuff? Right? So that's why it's good stuff. So let's read this a little bit. I'm going to read the whole thing, because it's such a powerful lesson that it's very important for ourselves to understand.